Hey folks, my name is Ravish and welcome back to another video in this series of DevOps real-time interviews. Now, we have a profile with us today. So this person is having around 6 plus years of experience in IT and 4 plus years of experience in DevOps and cloud related services. So the topics we have covered today is CloudTrail, CloudWatch, Amazon Lambda, Amazon ECS, Amazon DynamoDB, Certificate Manager a bit, Circle CI, EBS, EKS, a bit of DevOps lifecycle and ELB. So these are all the topics that we have covered today. So if you're new over here, please do consider subscribing to the channel. And one more thing about this interview is I have answered all the questions in this interview. So go check it out. I will try to list down all the questions in the comment section or in the description section. So please do take a look at that. Also, for better experience, please switch on the subtitles. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so I've gone through your profile and the things that you have mentioned. So I think you are comfortable in AWS a lot, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so what is your total years of experience?
In AWS,
No, not in AWS, total in IT.
in IT, about 6+ now.
Okay, and how much in DevOps?
In DevOps, I have 4+ now in DevOps.
And how much in cloud?
So most of the companies I work with, they always have a cloud presence. So about the same time.
About the same time. All right. Okay, so let's start with the AWS. This question is based on CloudTrail. Okay, so let's say you notice any suspicious activity in your AWS account. Okay, for example, unauthorized access, unauthorized IAM user creation. How would you use CloudTrail to investigate it?
So how I would use CloudTrail is to I would have probably go to the console access on CloudTrail, then I will track that particular. Then I will go to the IAM part of it. Then I will use that particular feature to track down the user making that request. So I can narrow it down to whatever resources was utilized by that user. Then I can track down probably the IP that is coming from and every other feature I can get from it.
Okay. How would I have done it? First of all, I have to find the relevant events. Okay, so in order to do that, you have to filter CloudTrail logs for events around the time frame of the suspicious activity. For example, you had the activity around 8 o'clock in the morning, so you have to select the
Okay.
time frame for the suspicious activity, and then you can look for create user or attach user policy events, because that's the one someone would have used to create an IAM creation. So this is the event that you can take a look, and then you can analyze the details, like check the source IP, which you talked about. You can talk about user agent
Yeah,
and
sure.
API calls associated with the events. So these can reveal hints about the attacker location and tools. So this is something that you can do. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Exactly.
Okay. So let's say you need to comply with a regulation that requires logging all API calls to your S3 buckets. Okay. How do you implement this with CloudTrail?
So can you come back?
Yeah,
Can you come again?
sure. So let's say you need to comply with a regulation that requires logging all API calls to your S3 bucket. So whatever S3 bucket is giving API call, you have to log it. Okay. How would you
All
do
right.
that using CloudTrail?
Using CloudTrail.
Yes.
Um, I've never had this implementation before. I've never had this business requirement before. But if I'm to do that, definitely the way I'm looking at it will be so every API is coming to the particular application right now. So we're talking about API request into a particular application, not every request into my environment, right? So I would configure some sort of integration with an S3 bucket, such that when that request hits that application, then it writes the logs onto that S3 bucket. So let's say maybe I'm running on serverless where I have an API gateway, that becomes very easy. It's just an S3 event. I can just use that. Then I can fire that logs into that S3. But if I'm to do that for a standalone application, then that would be like an API integration to S3.
Okay. Okay. See, first of all, you have to enable S3 bucket logging. Okay. So you can go to the select respective S3 bucket, activate the logging for the desired S3 bucket. What will happen is this will create dedicated CloudTrail logs for all read, write, and delete operations on the buckets. And then you can configure the log delivery, like choose a destination for the logs like S3 bucket, or if you want, you can use CloudWatch logs as well. This will ensure secure and centralized storage of your audit data. And then you can filter and analyze logs. So that's how you pretty much do it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So let's say your CloudTrail logs are growing rapidly. Okay. And you are storing it somewhere. So because of that, it leads to increased storage cost. How can you optimize log storage while maintaining necessary information? Did you
The
get the
way to do
question?
that would be to,
You got the question, right?
yeah, can you ask again?
Okay. So your CloudTrail logs are growing rapidly and you used to store it over somewhere, right? But because of this storage, it has lead to increased storage cost. Now I want
Yeah.
you to optimize log storage while maintaining only necessary information.
All right. So the first thing I will ask is I will ask the business to what extent do we keep these logs? So the business will tell me, okay, we need logs not older than so time. So once I have that information, then I'll ask. So should we keep these logs on? Should we make these new logs to be readily accessible and archive the old logs, or we just want to do away with the old logs? So if the business tells me we want to do away with the old logs, very simple. What I'll do is I'll go to S3 and configure a lifecycle rule to solve that particular issue. So logs from objects from time, you can delete that, and the other ones for time upward, you can just let that be. If the business wants to keep hold logs, maybe because of some uh, assessment or some policy, maybe there's a need to for a revisit, I can just push those logs to an archive storage which costs less. So that's the way I will go with it and fine tune that.
Okay. Okay. See, I faced the same situation in my last project. So what I did is, first of all, you need to use log filters. Okay, you can implement CloudTrail log filters to exclude irrelevant events from being logged. Okay, this significantly reduce the volume of data and associated cost. Then you can utilize log archiving as well. It means that you can archive older CloudTrail logs to cheaper storage options like Glacier Deep, S3 Glacier Deep, and
Mm-hmm.
because this will free up space in your primary storage while preserving compliance record. And then you can, I think, compress logs as well. You can use Amazon Kinesis Firehose to compress CloudTrail logs before delivery to your chosen destination. So this will further reduce the space and data transfer cost as well. Okay.
Mm.
So have you used CloudWatch in your project lately or before?
Yes. So we've used CloudWatch to set up. So we have some VMs running some critical workloads. So what we did was to set up CloudWatch on some of these VMs to monitor some system metrics on those server. So like the CPU utilization and storage. So what we did was just to configure some um, some threshold. So once the metric is in line, you can fire that alarm to the group. Then we'll see, okay, this is what is currently happening. Then we can decide to do something to the server, either to upscale it or to add the relevant resources to it.
Okay. Okay. So you're talking about some alarms, right? So
Yes.
based on that, let's say you need to send automated notifications when specific CloudWatch alarms are triggered. How do you configure this?
So what you do is to go to CloudWatch. You set up a topic, then you also configure some of the metrics you want. So once that metrics is hit, then CloudWatch sends the alarm to the group you've attached to that.
Okay. Okay. Like if I have to talk in detail, you can set the alarm for critical measures like CPU or API response time if it exceeds beyond some seconds, and you can, because of that, you can configure thresholds and trigger condition for each alarm, and then you can use any notification channel like email, SMS, or I think we have AWS chatbot also, so they can receive alerts while alarms are triggered.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think
For
there
us,
is,
we use SNS to
okay,
publish
simple
some
notification
of those
service.
notifications. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's say your web application experiencing performance issues during peak hours. Okay, how would you use CloudWatch to diagnose this bottleneck?
So I can configure CloudWatch on that on the server that the application is running, right? So um, what I can do there is, so it depends on what my application is consuming at that time. So for me to know that there's an excess activity on the application, it's probably is consuming, the CPU usage is high at that time, or probably the application is processing some business logic and probably it needs some hot storage, and it's just dumping um some data on that VM, and probably the cron jobs to take up those data might probably take a while. So that's some sort of overload that server. So whatever the case is, I will configure CloudWatch to monitor the CPU usage of that server. And if the CPU usage is high, I will then, I will send an alarm notifying that, okay, this is where we are at. So if I notice that we're having service failure, let's say at 80% utilization, I can configure CloudWatch to send a warning alarm at 60%. So when we are 60%, it sends an alarm, hey, something is running on this guy. So then we'll take appropriate measure to counter that.
Okay, just paraphrasing it, you just need to monitor the key metrics. Then you can just analyze the log and events, and then you can also utilize custom dashboard. So you can create custom dashboards in CloudWatch that combine relevant metrics, logs, and events, because this provides a unified view of your application health and performance during peak hours. Okay. Okay. So let's say you want to analyze historical CloudWatch data for trends and anomalies. Okay. How would you achieve that?
So for historical CloudWatch logs, so there are a lot of logs actually. So I would have to fine tune it to the particular one I need to analyze, right? So if I need to analyze it on a VM or on any other resources, then I will filter out for the particular resource I need to analyze. Then I will go into the logs. So once I'm in the logs, I will look for the particular time the specific event I'm trying to analyze happens. So I'll narrow it down to that time, then I'll filter out what I need from there. That's how I will approach it.
Okay. Have you any idea about any BI tools, business
Sorry?
intelligence, any business intelligence tool? Heard about it? Any?
No, 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 no.
Okay.
No, no, no.
Okay. I mean, uh, people generally utilize Amazon CloudWatch metrics insights first. They visualize and with the CloudWatch dashboards. A few organization or projects, they integrate with BI tools. So basically, what they do is they export CloudWatch data to business intelligence tool for further analysis and reporting as well, because this allows them to combine the application metrics with other business data for some kind of holistic view. So this is
Mm,
this is how it works. Okay.
yeah.
So do you have any experience in Amazon Lambda?
Yeah, sure, sure. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So consider a scenario in which you have a new API endpoint that needs to process image uploads asynchronously. Okay. How do you implement this using Lambda?
So what I'll do is I will create a Lambda function to process sorry, to process an image, right? And save it where?
No, no.
Just to process an image, right?
Yeah. I mean, you have a new API endpoint that needs to process image uploads. That has to be done asynchronously. So that's what we want to implement using Lambda.
Okay, so these API endpoints, I would create a function for that on a on the Lambda service.
Mm-hmm.
Then so this function will take in yes, this function will take in. I know that the timeout function for a Lambda function at a particular go is it's probably around 15. Yeah. So what I'll do is I will configure a function to take in this to take in this picture to process it to run the business logic it needs to run. Um, yes. Then if you want to save it into any S3 storage or any, we can also do that. But that's how we'll go about it.
Okay. Okay. See, the first part is obviously correct. You have to create a Lambda function because you configure a Lambda function triggered by an S3 put object event on your image.
Then sorry. I will expose so the Lambda function. I will expose an API gateway on that Lambda function, such that you can call that endpoint from that application. So it takes the image, it processes it. Then I think that's it.
Okay. Um, so what I was saying that when you configure a Lambda function triggered by an S3 put event on your image bucket, this will ensure automatic execution whenever any image is uploaded on the bucket. Okay. Then you can process the image within that Lambda function. You
Yeah,
can
S3 event. Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
S3 event.
So within that Lambda
Yeah,
function, you can use libraries like Boto3 or Pillow to extract
yeah,
information from
sure.
uploaded image. Then you can resize it or perform other transformation based on your requirements. Store the result and then transfer it. That's what you do.
Yes, if the application is dropping the image on an S3 bucket, yes, I will go that route, right? I can use S3 event, I can define it in my Lambda configuration. So once that bucket drops, Lambda picks it up, it processes it, then dumps it. But if I'm taking it from the application directly, like I'm just taking it from the application directly, I can expose an endpoint. The Lambda takes it, then process it and dumps it. Yeah.
Okay. So let's say sometimes the Lambda function that you have written experiences cold starts, and then whenever the initial processing happens, it slows down. How can you optimize the performance?
Can you come again, please?
Okay, so you have a lambda function created. Okay, and
Yes.
sometimes what happens it processes very slow. Okay, I mean the initial processing slows down, and sometimes it has cold starts. So how can you optimize the performance?
So how I will do this is to improve the lambda's function capacity to process stuff. So I can't remember vividly now.
What is lambda function
Um,
capacity?
so like so it depends on what the lambda is currently processing, right? So if I discover that the processing is slow, um, the way I would go about it is I would actually check the code first, and I would try and see from what stage are we going to what stage, right? Like what's the trigger to this function? Okay, this is what triggers it. Then it takes it here, it processes it here, then it dumps it here. So somewhere along that line, I will be able to pick out, okay, this is where we are lagging, and these are the things I need probably needs to increase, probably needs to reduce, or probably need to refactor the function or some sort. That's how we go about it.
Have you ever heard about provisioned concurrency in terms of lambda?
I've not used that before, so
Okay,
it's
okay,
possible.
no problem. So basically, you can start with enabling the provision concurrency. You can use provision concurrency to reserve a few concurrent lambda executions to avoid cold start for the initial request only. Okay, so this will ensure faster response time for the first few invocations. Okay, And then I think you can utilize code layers. So basically what you can do is you can package your lambda function along with the dependencies in a code layer. Okay, how that
Mm-hmm.
helps is this reduces download time during code starts as the dependencies are readily available. Okay, and then I think you can
Mm.
optimize the function code. The developers who have written, or the DevOps folks who have written it, you can just analyze the lambda code for performance bottlenecks and implement optimization. Okay,
Yeah.
like batch processing
Yes.
to improve efficiency. Okay,
Yes.
so
Yes, as well.
let's say you need to monitor the performance and stability of your lambda function. Okay, how you can club it with CloudWatch and do the thing?
Well, the last Lambda function we're currently using in our AWS environment that I implemented. Uh, so how I monitor the logs is using the CloudWatch, but I've never really dug deep into maybe checking other metrics with it. So what this guy does is to probably so because of some policies we have, it will check the current IAM keys for different IAM users, right? And based on some age, it will refine those keys, then sends notification on SNS to different users, like uh, based on the different key processing. Then you know that was what I implemented, like on that. So if there are other ways to some sort of monitor your uh, Lambda performance, no, I've not done that recently.
Okay, no problem, no problem. Okay, so you worked on ECS as well, right? Amazon ECS.
So in my environment, I don't use ECS, but I've used ECR, so that I use image to run some of my object on Kubernetes, and if I'm running Docker on VMs, I use that.
So are you comfortable in ECS? If not, I'll skip. I'll move on to some other topic.
I understand that ECR is Elastic Container Service,
Mm-hmm.
more like a managed Docker environment for AWS. But like I said, in my environment, I don't use it.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just asking, are you comfortable answering ECS? If yes, then I'll proceed. If no, I'll move on to some other topic. Are you comfortable?
Okay, yes, yes, yes. Let's go.
Okay. So let's say you are managing a microservices architecture in ECS. Okay. How would you handle scaling different services based on individual resource needs?
So scaling, what I would do is probably I would go to the ECS console, probably try and find a way to improve to increase the container running those services. So so let's say this particular ECS object is running this application, and maybe there's some bit of throttling, or we have this high traffic and the service is kind of lagging. That's the way I would go about it, right? Till I find the best way to do it.
Okay. Okay. So we faced a scenario in our current project. So what we did is, first of all, you can implement service auto scaling for ECS service, and then you can configure individual target tracking policies based on relevant metrics like CPU utilization or memory used for each service. Okay, what will happen is this will allow services to scale independently based on the specific demands. Okay, second option could be you can utilize the scaling group as well. You can assign each service to its own ECS scaling group with different instance type and resource capacities. This provides targeted scaling for each service and without affecting the others. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Mm, let's say you encounter high deployment failure rates when updating your ECS services. How do you improve this reliability and rollback if necessary?
Mm. So, like I said, how I would handle that is to investigate what is the cause of that issue first, and I'll probably go to the ECS service logs and see, okay, um, what are the things that needs to be sorted out, what caused this, how can we prevent it. then I can then narrow it down to, okay, what are the metrics I need to change on that particular service. I mean, that's how I will handle that.
Have you heard about blue-green deployments?
Yeah, blue green deployment, yes.
What exactly do we have? What do we mean by blue-green deployments?
Blue green deployment is you deploy a copy of your update to a particular platform, then you test it out. Then if everything works fine, then you deploy it to the prod side or the green side.
So basically, you can use that, implement blue-green deployments in this scenario. How? You can utilize
Okay.
blue-green deployments where a new service is launched to separate, a new service is launched to a separate ECS cluster before rolling over the traffic. This will allow rollback to the previous stable version if the new version experiences some issues. So that's pretty much
Okay.
about it. Okay,
All right. Thanks.
um, you need to monitor the health and performance of your ECS clusters and tasks. How do you utilize CloudWatch and other tools?
What I'll do is, like I said, I'm not really versed with ECS, but what I'll do is I will try and see how I can utilize CloudWatch to monitor the CPU usage, because I already know that ECS is just running containers, right? And what I'll do in that case is to, so based on the different jobs running, I would monitor the CPU utilization on those container. And if for adventure on those deployments, there's some sort of resource handling, like for each containers now there's a limit to what you can consume, and I would also try to implement that on those containers. That's how I will go about it till I get a good solution.
Okay, okay, okay. So in your profile, it's written you have worked on Amazon DynamoDB as well, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Let's say you plan to store user data for your mobile app in DynamoDB. How would you design the primary key for efficient queries?
I will design the primary key to use a UUID. So like instead of using a normal
What ID? UUID or GUID?
yeah, so like to every object that is coming to the DynamoDB, right? The identifier for those objects will be the primary key will be a UUID key, such that the application can just make a request to it once and retrieve that.
Okay, okay. See, first of all, what you can do is you can consider the access patterns. Choose a primary key that aligns with your anticipated query patterns. If you, for example, if you use a query by user ID, use the user ID as the partition key. If you need to search by username, combine software username and user ID, you can do that as a composite primary key. Okay, you can use global secondary index GSIs as well. That's how you can pretty much do it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say in your application you are using DynamoDB and you are experiencing slow DynamoDB read for certain queries. How do you diagnose and improve the performance?
So the if I notice some particular queries are taking long to to execute, what I'll do is to number one, what comes to my head is to use DAX for DynamoDB, right? So that it accelerates it, right? But then I would also have to investigate, like, why are these queries, um, taking time to execute. So that's what I would do.
Okay, see, first of all, you analyze the throughput metrics. I mean, you can check DynamoDB metrics to like consumed read and write capacity units. Then you can identify any tables or partitions are approaching the exceeding throttling limits or not. You can then review indexes and filters, or post that you can tune the consistency settings, if any. Um, okay. So let's say you need to backup and restore your DynamoDB data regularly. How would you achieve this?
What I would do is just to configure backups for that DynamoDB. That's just what I would do.
Yeah, there are multiple types of backups. Like what? what would you do? Backup is just like general answer. Like there are other things that you can do with backups. What are them?
Other things like
I mean,
maybe I'm not getting.
I mean, the backup is fine. Your answer is fine. It's just it needs to be elaborated.
Okay.
How many types of backups you can take, and what are the other techniques?
Um, so for me, I'll take the old backup of the old DynamoDB at some particular time, and if anything happens to that, I can always restore from the backup. I mean, that's how I would handle it. So, well, probably based on the application's sensitivity, then I might have to probably go for um, uh, some sort of setup that replicates what I have in my primary DB to the other one. As it's coming, is replicating it there, either in the same AZ or the other one. So, but primarily, what I will go for is um, I will just go to the Dynamo DB, then activate the backup. That's how I'm thinking about it right now.
Okay. See, first of all, you can utilize the continuous backups. Okay. You can enable DynamoDB continuous backups, which automatically store point in time snapshots for your tables at specific intervals. Okay. Then you can either restore from backups, easily restore your entire table or individual data items from point in time backups through the DynamoDB console or the API. The last is you can integrate with the AWS backup. For example, consider using AWS backup for centralized management and scheduling of Dynamo backups. You can
Yeah,
do that.
yes, exactly. That's the one I'm talking about.
So you have worked on certificate manager as well, right?
Yeah, no, 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 no.
Okay, it was there in your profile. If you're not comfortable, I'll move on.
All right,
Okay.
that's fine.
No, no. Are you comfortable or not?
No, I'm not. I'm not. You said certificate manager, right?
Yes. Okay.
No, no, no,
I'll move
no.
on. No problem. Okay. So the next is the CI tools. So what are the other CI tools that you have used apart from Circle CI?
I've used GitLab. I've used GitHub Action. Those two.
Okay. Currently in the current project, you're using Circle CI.
Yes.
Okay. So consider a scenario. Your teams develops a microservices architecture on AWS. Okay. How would you integrate Circle CI with your development workflow to automate deployment in the tests?
So what I'll do is I'll create different jobs, right? Then I'll create different workflow. Then on that project repository, we would have a basic understanding that okay, probably the master is what deploys to production, the staging is what deploys to our UAT, then the dev is what deploys to the dev playground, right? So based on PRs into these different VCS branch, then it will trigger that job. So I would define jobs and workflow that trigger per branch on the Circle CI YAML file. So when you push that, then it activates, then triggers the job for that particular flow. I don't know if that's fine or I should rephrase it.
Yeah, but what about testing?
So like I said, so for me, it's more of a PR management thing, right? We have the, let's say, master, staging, and dev, for example. Before a PR is merged into master, for example, the CI jobs must have run successfully on the dev and on the staging environment. So part of the jobs that will be executed will be testing jobs, QA jobs, integration tests, where this particular update we run some script against the new update. Then if that is successful, I mean everybody can see the pipeline that okay, this is successful. Then the PR can then be merged to the production. I mean to the master branch. Then that deploys um, to production.
Okay, for the testing part, you can just implement the testing strategies like integrating unit and integration test within your workflows to ensure code quality and functionality before deployment. Utilize test results and code coverage reports to identify and address the issues early. That's you what you can do. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's
Yeah.
say you are encountering intermittent build failures in Circle CI, and that is making the deployment unreliable. How would you troubleshoot the issue?
If I'm experiencing build failure in SQL CI and it's making
I mean that makes your deployment unreliable because it's been failing since quite a time. So how would you troubleshoot this issue?
so first of all, I would check the logs and see what is failing actually. So if I discover that it's not it's a dependency thing, then I would have um, the developers integrate some sort of package lock on the application, right? So if I discover that it's an application thing, I would have them, tidy that up. Then, so it depends on what is causing the job to fail, right? So if I discover that, okay, probably the the application is memory intensive,
Okay.
and I'm having some jobs they were failing because some other jobs couldn't complete, and it's another thing entirely. So based on how the issue I'm having comes, that's how I will solve it.
Okay. Okay. Let's say you need to track and visualize your team's build history and performance in Circle CI. Okay. How would you achieve this?
Can you come again, please?
Okay. So let's say you have a DevOps team. Okay. And you need to track and visualize your whole team's build history plus performance in Circle CI. How would you achieve this?
Mm. Uh, uh, I don't think I've used that feature of Circle CI before. No, no.
Have you
So
used?
what I do, my
Okay.
yeah.
Please go ahead.
All right. So what I'll do is uh, there's this particular feature I've not explored it actually. It's called I think Circle CI Insight or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, so I would probably investigate the way to go, then track it down. But currently, what I use, I deploy my applications. If there's a build fail, it sends notification. If it's successful, then it's successful. Then if I have to track any logs, I will track it down with the specific job that fails, and I'll communicate to the different teams respectively.
Okay. Okay. See, the first thing is you can utilize Circle CI dashboards. Okay, so there is you can leverage built-in Circle CI dashboards to visualize build status, trends, and key metrics like duration and success rate. Okay, then you can integrate it with monitoring tools as well, like AWS CloudWatch or other monitoring tools to aggregate build data with other AWS metrics. The third thing you were talking about is correct. You can implement reporting tools as well. You can consider using tools like Circle CI Insights. There are multiple third-party reporting tools as well. They can also generate detailed report on your team's build activity, metrics, trends. That's what you can use. Okay. So you have worked on Elastic uh, block storage as well, right? EBS.
Yes, EBS, yes.
Okay. So let's say you need to choose the right EBS volume type for your production database instance. What factors would you consider and which type would you recommend?
For my production
Instance, yes.
database instance. Okay. Um, can you come? What would I consider? Can you come again on that part?
You have to consider factors. Uh, okay, I'll repeat the question. Okay. So let's say you have a production database instance. Okay.
Yes.
You need to choose the right EBS volume type for this. So what exactly are the factors would you consider, and which type would you recommend?
Okay, so the first thing I'll consider is the read and write for the application. For I mean, the type of read and write I'm expecting into um, that the DB instance. Then I also consider the IOPS. Then I also consider the network bandwidth that will make the that would give like an optimal working condition for that setup. Then uh, then I would make choice on the type based on um, how would I put it? How let me say how fast I want the data retrieval to be. So I will make choice on either to use HDD or to use an SSD type. So I mean that's how I will just narrow it down till I make the best choice.
See, you can consider the following factors. First of all, the performance requirement, the first one. So it has to be IOPS and throughput needs for your
Yes,
database.
I
Okay. Second would be your cost. Different volume types have varying price structures, so you have to consider that. Third one be your durability. So how critical is your data persistence? You can consider SSDs for the higher durability. I think you talked about SSD, right?
Yes, I said either HDD or SSD. So based on the how fast I want the retrieval to be and how critical I want it to be. So that's how I will narrow it down.
Okay, and the last, I think you can use provisioned IOPS versus bursting if you need consistent performance or occasional burst. So based on that. Okay. Uh, okay, I asked about recommendation as well, right? So what generally would you recommend?
Sorry.
I asked two questions, right? One is the factors and second is the recommendation. So what would you recommend for the
So
production?
for me, okay. So what I would recommend anytime is any. So based on the cost, like you said, any SSD type, then a provisioned IOPS, a provisioned type IOPS type is also fine by me. So, but based on the cost, yeah.
Okay. So let's say you are encountering frequent EBS volume snapshot exceeding your billing budget. How you can optimize the snapshot costs?
Uh, so snapshot is like a copy of what I have in the DB, right? And if I see that exceeding my current budget, then probably we need to redefine uh, uh, the business RTO and RPO. Like I need to know if I can work with if I can meddle a bit with the RTO and RPO. So if you're telling me that you can withstand the data loss of let's say 4 hours, and let's say I'm taking snapshots let's say every 4 hours, and that is increasing the billing, right? So we can probably throttle that down or increase that so that we don't have as much snapshots um, taken. That's one way. The other way will be to probably uh, uh, so like instead of taking snapshots every now and then, we can take backups for at intervals too, right? So that we will have a secondary backup to that. So that's how I will navigate with that.
Okay, okay. Mm, so, see, first of all, you can think about the retention policies. Okay. You can implement a life cycle policies to automate snapshot deletion based on the age or other criteria if you have. This avoids storing unnecessary long term snapshots. Okay. Then you can schedule the backup strategically, like optimize backup schedules based on your needs. Consider daily backups for critical data and less frequent backups of for less critical data. That's pretty much about it. Okay. So this would be my last topic for today. Elastic Kubernetes service. Okay. So
All right.
let's say you are planning to migrate containerized applications to EKS. What considerations should you have for the security and the access control?
what considerations should I have on the security and access control
Correct.
for the cluster or for the application itself?
You are planning to migrate containerized application to AKS. So your applications are
Okay.
containerized and you have to put it on EKS.
So the security has to do with accessing the cluster, right?
Yes. A part of it,
All
yes.
right. So okay. So what I'll do is so if I'm to do that, I would uh um so what I do in my case is, so anybody that needs access to the cluster, or if I need to do something on the cluster, I give access, and then and I have this the object manifest defined. Then uh, so what I do is to um, deploy these objects on the cluster. So for security, for me, uh, I will just have to give the required access to anybody that wants to do that deployment. So for me, I would have the needed access. Then for the application security, I'll probably push my. So you said the application is containerized, therefore
Yes.
there's an image somewhere. So I would implement a private repository to store the image. Let's say ECR, right? Then I know that my cluster can authenticate into ECR and pull that secured image. Then load up the objects. So that's the way I'm thinking about it.
See, you are correct for the first part. The security through IAM rules for service account. I mean, you can implement IAM rules for service account within your pods to ensure they have least privilege access to the required AWS resources. There is one thing known as network isolation. So basically, you can utilize Kubernetes network policies to define network access rules and isolate pods. So this will prevent the unauthorized communication between the applications. Okay. Then there is something known as PSP. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. That's security in between the pods, right? Yeah, network policy. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Then I think we have PSPs, pod security policies. You can define PSPs to enforce security best practices such as restricting resource usage and disabling the privileged containers. That's pretty much I remember right now. Okay. So let's say you encounter pod deployment failures in your EKS cluster. How would you approach troubleshooting and identifying the root cause?
Okay, so what I'll do is to track that deployment first. Then um, if it's a production deployment and the existing service that needs to consume that, so what I would do is I would reverse that deployment first. Then I would then deploy that object into a namespace that I can use to test. Then I will now check the logs for that particular deployment. I'm gonna see. So let's say that this deployment has let's say it has some pods, and so what I would do is I would check the logs. I would describe these pods, right, and see what is failing in these logs, right? What is failing in this deployment, so I can track that. Then I can make the needed correction. Then once that is done, I can put it together. Then update the deployment on prod.
Okay. See, you can review the pod logs. You can then utilize Kubernetes events, and at the end, you can scale down and investigate. That can be done. Okay. Let's say you want to scale your EKS cluster based on application load. How would you implement auto scaling?
Uh, So in my current environment, I don't use Pod Autoscaler. I don't use Kubernetes Autoscaler. So what I do is so before deployment, we plan out the okay. So for this application, this is the traffic we're experiencing, and this is the number of ports we want to service this request. So what we do is to set the replicas for that deployment. So we want this number of ports at each time. Then also the limit request thing. So for different application, we set a resource thing. So that's how we approach it.
Have you ever
That's how
used
I would approach it.
have you ever used HPA,
HPA?
horizontal autoscaler?
No, 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 no.
Okay, okay, no problem. Okay, I think we are good. Okay, just one more thing. You have written ELB also in your profile, elastic load balancing. Okay, so let's say, can you explain me the role of elastic load balancing in distributing incoming application traffic across multiple targets?
All right. So an ELB is used to distribute traffic based on the strategy you set on it, right? So you have an ELB interfacing with an incoming request. Then at the back end, you actually connect that to different endpoints. So if you're using an ELB for let's say like you have like two applications running on VM, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can connect the ELB to, so based on the type of ELB you want to use, right? So if you're interested in more intelligent traffic routing, you can use an application load balancer. If you're interested in maybe speed or stuff, you can use the NLB, like the network load balancer, right? And or you can just go with the classic one. So for me, how I go about is I provision the ELB, then I connect the backend resources to it, so that when request comes, it can route the request based on the strategy on that ELB.
Okay. How can you configure ELB to enhance security and protect against common web vulnerabilities?
Uh, so the way I will do that is, so for most web insecurities, what I'll use is a WAF, right? So
Okay.
uh, I have my requests coming in, right? So then I configure a WAF on that where those resources are provisioned. Then so network from my WAF goes into my ELB, then it routes to the resources. That is how I will use it.
Okay. See, WAF is just a part of it. You can enhance the security using SSL termination, connection draining, and integration with WAF, which you already told about. You can also configure security groups for instances behind the load balancer. This will enable the access logs and employ SSL TLS policies that contributes to secure and resilient application delivery. Okay, this would be my last question for today. Can you share me a scenario where ELB played a crucial role in handling sudden increases in traffic?
Mm, I'm trying to I'm trying to think through a current project because I can remember. Uh, so currently where an ELB played a crucial role in traffic handling. So for now, I can't really place my hand on one because most of my deployment is on the cluster. Then I have an ingress controller. So like based on ingress on those deployments, it handles those traffic. But what I can place right now uh, uh, is an implementation I can remember right now. So like I talked about us having like a central login system, right? So um, so we had to implement this local Grafana. So the Grafana server was in cluster, right? It was on the cluster in itself, but then we need to monitor other workloads on the other cluster. So uh, basically, so what I did actually is just to expose an NLB from the other cluster, from the second cluster, which happens to be like from the second cluster. Then I also have my agents running on different objects there, right? So that network load balancer takes traffic um, from the service deployed on that cluster. Then on the master cluster itself, so once that endpoint is exposed, I just plug it into the other one, then I can see all the logs from the other one. So that's my recent implementation of an NLB that I can remember.
Okay, so in a scenario where an application experiences a sudden urgent traffic, ELB can dynamically scale by distributing the incoming request across additional healthy instances. This helps in maintaining application performance and availability under varying load conditions. Okay, so yeah, I think I'm done